right. Alrighty, everybody. Good afternoon. As I mentioned, my name is Danielle Golinski, and I am absolutely so happy to be with you all today and talking to you about mastering the virtual interview. For some of you, you may be familiar with this. Some of you may not be familiar with this at all. And so then I'm hoping through today's interaction, and it will be brief, that you'll be able to walk away with a better understanding about what this kind of interviewing experience is and being able to be successful in this process. I work in the School of Business, and I see many of our business students interacting with employers in this way. In a typical, normal way, yes, sometimes employers are using this virtual interview in lieu of maybe a phone screen or whatnot. It's a really great way for employers to get to know candidates and for students to kind of get a real interview experience. But sometimes there may not be anyone on the other side of the line. So a quick little review is what is an on-demand or a virtual interview? And I'm going to be using these two terminologies kind of interchangeably today. So that's when maybe if you've applied for an internship or a full-time job and you receive a link via email from an employer. And they say, congratulations, we would love to offer you an opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit more. And sometimes the linguals will say you will have maybe up to 72 hours or so to complete this virtual interview. And they might give you some tips and tricks with how to be successful with that experience. So some big platforms that are out there, HireVue, Greenhouse, Yellow, among a few others, are really utilizing this kind of stay-at-home pandemic right now to still continue and to engage with candidates, but just in a virtual capacity. So you might have to click on that link, and it is a real interview. So it is important, and my job today is hopefully to set you up for success and have you find some new tips and tricks and resources to help you better understand how to be a master at this. The unique thing about a virtual or an on-demand interview is that there is no one on the other side. So you're not actually talking to a human being at that time, you're talking to the computer. And that can be a little bit unique, that can be challenging, they can also feel a little bit awkward as well too. And as you're moving along, as you're going to be reading a question off the screen, you'll typically have about 20 to 30 seconds or so to prepare your thoughts. And then after those 20 or 30 seconds are over, the camera will turn on your computer and you'll have typically between 2 to 3 minutes to answer. The unique thing about a virtual interview is that your interview is being recorded. It's being saved and then being shared with the employer. Sometimes candidates will have the opportunity to re-record their responses, or sometimes it's just a one and done. So it's really important to be comfortable with this platform before you formally have your first official interview. And we do have some resources in the SPDC to help you get more comfortable with how to use this. So that is the general tone of an on-demand virtual interview. And then that package is being sent to the employer. They have a whole backside to the platform, and then they are able to look at those interviews at their leisure. It's actually quite a convenient tool for many employers, as sometimes they might receive hundreds of applications for a couple job postings. So this system really does simplify it for them. The artificial intelligence or robots are really being embedded into this platform, and you are, as a candidate, being graded by a computer or a robot, and that grade is being passed along then to the recruiter as well. Typically, an employer will only look at the candidates that have really strong grades by the computer. And you may not really know what those grading criteria are. And so through my tips and tricks today, I hope that you'll be able to better understand what those criteria might be in order to make your application continue to move on. So before we jump into all the tips and tricks, I want to kind of get a quick lay of the land here about who is here on the call today, and just so I better understand about where you all stand. So if you are familiar with QR codes, I'm just getting comfortable with that myself. If you want to take your cell phone and just hover it over the QR code, I have two quick polls for you all, just to see where you all stand. Have you ever engaged in a virtual interview? And just take a couple of seconds there to fill that out, hopefully. There we go. Okay, look at that. Not yet. You're lucky. It is common. It's always been a common tool, but right now in today's world, it's even becoming a little bit more common as well. Okay, so I might use this as a guiding point that maybe others have not. Okay, a handful. Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much. It helps me. And our next interactive piece. So let's say all of a sudden, congratulations, you are invited to a virtual interview. You are feeling what? So please keep this professional. What are some words that would come to your mind? Would you be excited? Would you be nervous? Would you be hesitant? Would you be unprepared? And this is going to be a word cloud, and you should be able to submit multiple words after submitting it each time. And there are no wrong answers here. Again, this is just my opportunity to get a lay of the land to see how you're all feeling. Okay. It can be confusing for sure. Okay. Hesitant. It's definitely a very unique way to interview for sure. Okay. So those two words are helpful for me. And thank you so much for submitting those. Okay. Whoa, here we go. Okay. Might be a sentence in there. Confused, hesitant. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm hopeful that by the end you feel a little bit more confident, maybe a little bit more prepared. Alrighty. So tip number one, prepare. I truly do believe that by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. So do keep in mind that although this might be a different way for you of experiencing an interview, it really is an interview. A lot of these on-demand virtual interviews are replacing a phone screen because those can take time. It can take time between the recruiter and the candidate to figure out what day, what time works best. And there also might be multiple time zones potentially that are embedded as part of that process. So this is really a really quick way for candidates to complete this interview at their leisure. Potentially, if you are a morning person, you could complete this interview at 6 o'clock in the morning if you wanted to. You could also complete this at 4 a.m. if you needed to as well. If that's the time that works best for you, that works best for the system. It may not work best for the employer. They may not be wanting to interview at 4 a.m. But if that works for you, then it works for the system. So keep in mind, this really is an interview. I expect that all students review the resume that you use to submit with your application. And the nice thing about a digital interview is that you may decide to have some notes in front of you to help you be successful with this experience. So I don't want books or an encyclopedia of notes to have in front of you, but maybe have your resume in front of you to reference during that prep time. As I mentioned, before every question, you will have typically about 10, 15, 30 seconds to prepare your thoughts. You definitely want to have a scratch piece of paper and a writing utensil available so you can maybe jot down some suggestions and some ideas about maybe where you want the story to go to. And just like with an interview, all of your responses should be between 20 seconds to 2 minutes. That's really good practice for interviewing 101, interviewing in general. And I definitely recommend continuing that time frame during a virtual interview as well. And another way to prepare is also to refresh on general interviewing questions. Of course, it's impossible to prepare for every single kind of question that they will be asking you, but it is possible to prepare for the most commonly asked questions. Tell me about yourself. Why are you interested in working for us? Why should we hire you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What questions do you have for us? So when a lot of these times when students are completing these virtual interviews, a lot of the questions are going to be some of the most basic questions, but also maybe some behavioral questions. So being able to understand how to respond to a behavioral question, and that's going to be using the STAR method. And when you're answering a STAR method, it's always providing a specific story or an example to back up your responses. Typically, with virtual and on-demand interviewing, the interview is not going to last that long. I would say most commonly it's between 5 to 6 questions, maybe 20 minutes maximum. Unless the employer gives you additional information, then I would expect and assume that that would kind of be the general time frame. I have seen some students where they do have a writing test or so during this virtual interview, but typically that information is shared in advance so that they can prepare. So if you ever would like additional guidance in interviewing, answering those basic and behavioral questions, you are welcome to to look at the Porter Center website and then also the Student Professional Development website. We have a ton of great resources there for interviewing, resumes, cover letters, et cetera, to help you out. And also know that the career advising team, we are working right now in a remote fashion, and we are always happy to hop on a quick call with you to help answer your questions personally. Tip number 2, preparing, part 2. This is so important, and it actually gets 2 slides in my opinion. So just as you would prepare for a real in-person interview, you would also prepare for a real on-demand interview as well too. So attire, you want to dress professionally, just like you would if you were showing up for a real interview. So that's typically dressing a half step to a full step above the expectations. And so that might mean, if you're a business major, that might be wearing potentially a full business suit. At least dressing business casually. And I recommend dressing head to toe. Why? Because when you put on that attire, when you change out of maybe some athleisure or comfortable wear and putting on some casual, business casual or professional dress, it will really shift your headspace to share with you that you are there for an interview. You're there for a professional experience. It really does help shift the mindset. And I say dress head to toe because you never know. You don't want to get caught in a really awkward situation by any chance. I know I was talking with a student or working with a student years ago, and he was completing a virtual interview and a fire alarm actually went off. And that can be really awkward. So of course he had to close down his computer, but fortunately, he didn't have to worry about putting pants on. So that was able to not be a problem or an issue at all. Background. You really want to make sure that your background is as distraction-free as possible. So that's as plain of a boring as a wall that you can find, if that's possible. We do not recommend sitting in front of windows because if you sit in front of a window, it's going to backlight you, and the computer system, the AI, will not be able to pick up on your facial expressions or your eye contact. And that information is coming in a couple slides. So really make sure that your background is as distraction-free as possible. And that also includes your noise. So, trying your best to eliminate background noises. If you have any pets at home, maybe trying to close the door to keep them out. I'm currently at home in New Hampshire right now, and I know that my dog is outside running around and barking right now. And I heard that just a little while ago. So it's just trying your best to eliminate those background distractions and those background noises in order to make a positive first impression. And it's also setting up the stage. I highly recommend placing your computer on a solid platform, a desk, or a table, and not putting this computer on your lap, because it's going to start to kind of move around a little bit, and that's going to be very distraction for the ending audience. Materials. So having your materials. A convenience factor about doing a virtual on-demand interview is that you may have some notes in front of you. Like I mentioned earlier, it should not be a whole encyclopedia of everything that you want to say verbatim, but I would recommend having a notepad close by, maybe some stories that you've already thought about in terms of what you want to highlight, a copy of your resume, and then maybe a writing utensil as well to jot down any notes that you might want to. I always recommend having a water bottle close by in case you get nervous and you maybe have a tickle in your throat. So just really prepare yourself, and maybe have a tissue because you never know if you might have to sneeze. And doing a dry run, when at all possible, really checking to see if you're able to do a practice run or a dry run. With many of these platforms, you will have the opportunity to practice a couple questions completely independently on your own that will not be shared with the employer. And why they do that is for you to get a little bit more comfortable with the platform and to really see how to use it to its best ability. So knowing that you may be able to practice it right before you jump into your real interview questions, and knowing that the employer will not see those practice questions. You might have multiple opportunities to re-record. But if you're not able to record with that platform per se, trying another engaging way of technology. So maybe that might be Skype or maybe FaceTime, just to see what the other person might be able to see on the other side. Can they see you well? Can they hear you well? Can they just pretty much from the shoulders up is really all the employer needs to be able to see. And making sure that you're sitting or standing, I'm standing right now in a comfortable environment that works best for you. And again, if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask using the chat feature. Tip number 3, the importance of body language. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So of course you can say a lot verbally, We can also say a heck of a lot more non-verbally as well. So when it comes to body language, the body language is so important to be mindful of, even in this virtual fashion. So a nice little acronym is SOLER, S-O-L-E-R. That stands for sitting up squarely. So making sure that you're sitting up or standing up squarely, and that your shoulders are rolled back, and that your head is high, and that you're not crouched forward. O, open. So that's typically making sure that you're not crossing here or not really crossing any extremities, having that open kind of body language. It makes it more inviting. L, leaning in. So that's, you don't want to lean in too much to the camera, and you don't want to be too far away. So it's a nice little balance between everything. And these are also an acronym that you can use in person as well. E is extremities. So just making sure that your feet aren't really jumping around too much, especially if you're sitting in a swivel chair, trying to keep your feet nice and squarely on the floor. And then E for extremities is with your hands. Try not to make them too grandiose in terms of movements or talking too much with hands. That could be a distraction point. Of course, it's normal to talk with one's hands, and I know I'm doing it right now, but trying to keep that out of the camera view so that it's not a distraction. It can be just focused on your performance. And then R is relax. So have fun with it. This should be an exciting time. It might be a new experience for you, but to enjoy the experience. It may not be as great as it is in meeting someone in person, but it's not that bad. Smiling. Smiling is so important. When you're completing your interview, you will see a countdown. 3, 2, 1, go. On that go, you should already be smiling and looking at that computer eyeball. Yes, AI. AI is looking at your eye contact that you are maintaining with the eyeball that's on your computer. So it's important to make sure that that's where you're kind of keeping your primary focus point. It might be putting a sticker next to your computer to remind you to look there. It's going to feel a little bit weird, but practice does make perfect with that one. And already be smiling when you're answering before the question begins. And also smiling throughout, and then smiling at the end as well too. That makes you seem more inviting. It might make you enjoy yourself a little bit more. It might kind of loosen up some anxiety or some nerves there as well. So the eye contact and smiling is so, so important, and knowing that the computer, the AI, is also grading you on that as well. Practice makes perfect. Practice, practice, practice. So I love Simone Biles. I think she's a fantastic gymnast. And she said that practice creates confidence, and confidence empowers you. I cannot agree with this more. So when I'm working with students who are maybe unfamiliar with this kind of interviewing experience, I like to equate it either maybe if you enjoy maybe a hobby like a sport or art. So for me, growing up, something that I really enjoyed was playing field hockey. I love that sport. But I remember the first time that I went on the field and I picked up that stick, it was really weird. It felt uncomfortable. It was awkward. It was really hard. But I wanted to learn how to play this sport. And so I went on the field every day. I practiced, and just kept at it. And slowly but surely over time, I started to get more comfortable, get more confident. I was able to even elevate it, doing some back tricks and things like that. It was a lot of fun, actually. And at some point, it appears overnight, you can kind of pick up that stick, you can pick up that ball, that paintbrush, whatever it might be, and it feels natural. So for some, that might take a couple times practicing this kind of interviewing, getting back on that court, getting back on that field, and that's okay. But knowing that this is also, I think, a glimpse into the future as well. So it's important to be able to get comfortable with it. It may not be something that you look forward to or that you necessarily enjoy, but when you become more comfortable with it, the confidence will come over. And the employer on the other side will truly enjoy watching your video and seeing all that you have to offer. So practice, practice, practice. Some of the resources that we provide here in the Student Professional Development Center is that, of course, we are happy to have a conversation with you virtually to practice maybe a practice interview and to help you gain some confidence in just interviewing in general. We are absolutely happy to do that. We also have an additional resource called Big Interview. If you go to elon.edu, you type in Big Interview into that search function, you'll be able to find that resource. And that resource will simulate pretty closely to what an on-demand virtual interview will be like. You can have the system ask you a random assortment of questions. You can also have the system ask you really challenging questions, or maybe questions that are more focused in the industry that you're looking to pursue. It's kind of a really great platform, actually. And the best thing about that is that you can actually record yourself answering the questions, and then you can watch yourself back. I think that's a really great learning tool, and it's very helpful, especially as you're just beginning to get more comfortable and get more confidence in this whole experience. So the big interview is really one of the best resources that we have to offer, and you can practice that unlimited. It's free for you all. All you'll need to do is create a username and a profile, and the opportunities are truly endless. Additionally, you can also save those videos that you are doing for practice, and you can send it along to a career advisor or a family member or maybe even a professor, and they could actually provide you feedback as well too. So that is a great tool and a great opportunity to get more of a master at that during this time. So this is the opportunity that those are all of the tips and tricks that I've prepared for you all today. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to use the chat feature that's embedded here. And I am looking at the questions. You can send them privately if you would like, just to me, or you can also send them to the whole group as well if you would like. But if you have any questions or things that I can clarify about the virtual interview, I'm hopeful that your words have changed from being maybe intimidated to anxious and nervous to maybe being a little bit more familiar. You're also welcome to send me a personal email if you would like. And I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you one-on-one to talk about this further. That's absolutely not a problem at all. I love talking about this virtual interviewing. I think it's really important to be able to understand it, especially during these times. Employers are definitely referring to this kind of method to continue to hopefully interview candidates for full-time and internships. I want you all to be prepared. Great question. So do virtual interviews usually replace phone interviews? Yes. I'm seeing this commonly more and more as technology just continues to grow, to strengthen, that this kind of interview is going to potentially replace a phone screen or a phone interview, or at least the first round of a phone interaction. So as I mentioned earlier, I specifically work with business students primarily, and I do see that all industries within the business school are experiencing this kind of interview. I can also imagine that if you are in the College of Arts and Sciences or in the School of Communications, that you also might be experiencing these kinds of interviews. But this will not be the only interview that you have with an employer. I just want to make sure that you understand that. This will not be the only interview. This is just the opportunity for the interview to maybe narrow down the pool of candidates. As I mentioned, employers many times get hundreds of applications for a few job openings. And so with the embedding of technology and AI, it's able to help make their jobs a little bit easier. Of course, it's not perfect. It's maybe not ideal in every situation, but just being aware of those things is really, really important to set yourself up for success. What I can say that if you are selected after a first round of virtual interviewing to continue on, then that second round of interviewing, it might be meeting with someone in person or virtually or over the phone as well. So if you are continuing along in their process, that means that you're doing the right things that you need to do and that you're making a positive first impression. Amazing. Well, feel free, if no one has any additional questions, I hope that you learned something new today. And as I mentioned, this will be recorded, and I appreciate you all taking a few moments out of your busy schedule to meet and to learn something new today. I wish you all the best of luck in your future interviews. I hope you and your family and loved ones and friends are doing well and staying healthy during this time. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out at any time. We are still here and still working. Take care, everyone. Be well.